I want you to be my pretend fiancé.
Excuse me? Did I hear you correctly?
Joon-Woo Han drove through the glowing streets of Miami, Florida, his black luxury sedan. Cutting smoothly through evening traffic. Neon lights reflected off the windshield, blurring into streaks of color as his mind replayed the day's meetings, profits discussed in millions, contracts signed without hesitation, decisions that shaped entire industries. At 34, Joon-Woo was the CEO everyone feared and admired. Cold. Brilliant. Unreachable. Yet as his phone vibrated against the console, his jaw tightened. Mother. He exhaled slowly before answering, already bracing himself. Iyama, he said, his voice calm, controlled. Joon-Woo, his mother replied warmly, too warmly. Have you eaten? He almost laughed. That was always how it started. Yes, he lied easily, merging onto the coastal highway. I'm on my way home. There was a pause. Then his father's voice joined the call, deep, authoritative, impossible to ignore. We need to talk. Joon-Woo's grip on the steering wheel tightened. His mother continued, you're not getting any younger. The board respects you, but society notices these things. A man without a wife is incomplete. Here we go again. I've told you before, Joon-Woo said carefully. I'm busy. Busy for years, his father snapped. You built an empire, yes. But what about a family? The Florida breeze streamed through the cracked window, warm and heavy, but Joon-Woo felt cold. I have someone, he said suddenly. The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Silence fell. Then, what did you say? His mother asked sharply. I'm seeing someone, he repeated, heart pounding. A woman I intend to marry. The car drifted slightly before he corrected it. He had never planned to say that. Never planned to lie. But the relief was immediate. Oh, his mother breathed, emotion thick in her voice. Why didn't you tell us? Because it's serious, Joon-Woo replied smoothly, the CEO mask slipping perfectly into place. I wanted to be sure. His father hummed thoughtfully. Is she Korean? Joon-Woo stared ahead at the endless road. No. Another pause, longer this time. Then we must meet her, his mother said firmly. We're coming to Florida next month. The world seemed to slow. Coming? Joon-Woo echoed. Yes, she said happily. We've already spoken to the travel agent. His pulse thundered. That's not necessary. It is, his father said. If she is to be your wife, we must see her with our own eyes. The call ended moments later with plans already forming, dates, expectations, pressure tightening like a noose. Joon-Woo pulled into his penthouse garage and shut off the engine, sitting in silence as the weight of his own lie crushed down on him. He had no girlfriend. No fiancée. No woman waiting for him at home. Just an empty apartment and a ticking clock. His parents were coming. And he had 4 weeks to find a woman willing to pretend to love him. Unbeknownst to him, the answer was already part of his weekend routine, a woman with long, straight hair, strong arms, and eyes that saw far too much. And she had no idea her life was about to collide with his. Elizabeth Monroe believed in discipline. Every morning before the sun fully claimed the Florida sky, she was already awake, tying her long straight hair into a sleek ponytail, slipping into fitted workout gear, and reminding herself. Show up, even when life is heavy. The gym was her sanctuary. The place where pain turned into strength, where control could be reclaimed one repetition at a time. As a certified gym instructor in one of Miami's most exclusive fitness clubs, Elizabeth was respected. Clients trusted her because she pushed them hard but never judged. She corrected posture with firm hands, encouraged with quiet words, and never let anyone feel small for. Starting at the beginning. Behind her calm professionalism, life wasn't easy. Student loans lingered. Rent climbed higher every year. Her mother's health demanded attention and money she didn't always have. Still, Elizabeth carried herself with dignity, her beautiful eyes steady, her spine straight, unwilling to let the world see her strain. That Saturday morning, the gym buzzed with soft music and the rhythmic hum of machines. Elizabeth adjusted the weights for one of her clients, counting out reps. Last 2. You've got this. Across the room, Joon-Woo Han ran on the treadmill. Elizabeth noticed him the way she noticed all her regulars, briefly, professionally. He came every Weekend, always alone, always precise. Expensive workout clothes. Perfect posture. Minimal conversation. A man who belonged, yet never truly blended in. She'd learned his name from the front desk. Billionaire CEO. High profile. Untouchable. Yet today, something was different. Joon-Woo stared straight ahead, but his mind was nowhere near the gym. His thoughts tangled around his parents' voices, the lie he'd told, the deadline he'd created for himself. He ran harder than usual, as if speed could outrun reality. Elizabeth caught him slowing too abruptly and walked over, towel in hand. "Careful," she said calmly. "Sudden stops can strain your calves." He glanced at her, momentarily startled, as if he'd forgotten there was anyone else in the room. "Thank you," he replied, distracted, eyes clouded with something she couldn't quite read. Their gaze met for a fraction of a second. Elizabeth noticed his sharp features, the tiredness beneath his composed exterior. Joon-Woo noticed her for the first time. The way confidence radiated from her without arrogance. The strength in her presence. The warmth in her voice. Then his phone vibrated. He looked away. "Excuse me," he said quickly, stepping off the treadmill and moving toward the lockers, already lost again in his thoughts. Elizabeth watched him go, brow furrowing slightly. Rich men, she thought. Always carrying invisible burdens no amount of money could fix. She returned to her client without another glance back. Neither of them knew that this brief, almost forgotten moment, this quiet crossing of path, was the beginning of something neither discipline nor wealth could control. And while Joon-Woo wrestled with the consequences of his lie, fate had already placed the woman he needed directly in his path. Joon-Woo Han sat alone in the quiet of his Miami mansion, the city lights spilling like gold through floor-to-ceiling windows. The penthouse was immaculate, every surface polished, every chair perfectly aligned, yet none of it could make the tight knot in his chest disappear. He had always been a man in control. Deals, board meetings, stockholders, negotiations, they all bent to his will. But this lie? This personal problem? It was a different kind of challenge, one money and power couldn't fix. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and leaned back in his leather armchair, watching the liquid swirl. His parents were coming in less than a month. They expected to meet the woman he had chosen, the woman he had lied about in a moment of exasperation. He could imagine their disappointment. Their questions. Their thinly veiled judgment. Joon-Woo pinched the bridge of his nose. Who could possibly play this role convincingly? He needed someone elegant, confident, poised, but approachable. Someone who could charm his parents without looking like a hired actress. Then he remembered her. Elizabeth Monroe. The gym instructor with the long straight hair and eyes that seemed to see everything, yet gave nothing away. The woman who corrected her clients' postures with care but carried herself with an effortless authority. She was intelligent, strong, and unlike every other option he'd considered authentic. A plan formed in his mind, as sharp and calculated as any corporate strategy he had ever devised. He would approach her first thing in the morning, before work, before his mind got tangled in 1,000 other obligations. He could almost picture it, the city still sleepy, the gym's fluorescent lights bright against the pre-dawn sky, Elizabeth stretching or adjusting a client's form. He would make her an offer. Simple, clear, compelling. She would laugh at first, certainly, but perhaps, with the right incentive, she might agree. The thought made him smile briefly. There was an edge of uncertainty, of risk, and for the first time in years, that thrilled him. Joon-Woo drained his glass, set it carefully on the side table, and rose. The mansion was silent around him, but he could already feel tomorrow's confrontation shaping the course of his life. He was a man used to commanding the impossible, and now he would command her attention. And perhaps, in the process, discover something entirely unexpected about himself. As he prepared for bed, Joon-Woo allowed himself a single acknowledgement of the truth: this wasn't just about a fake fiancée. Deep down, he already knew he wanted her, and the idea of seeing her again the next morning made him more restless than any boardroom negotiation ever had. Tomorrow, he would make a proposition. Tomorrow, everything could change. The gym was quiet that Monday morning, the soft hum of treadmills and the occasional clang of free weights filling the air. Florida's sun had barely peeked over the horizon, casting pale light through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elizabeth Monroe adjusted her client's form, her long, straight hair falling over her shoulder as she counted reps. She didn't notice him at first. Joon-Woon stood near the entrance, impeccably dressed in casual yet expensive workout clothes, a quiet intensity about him. He had rehearsed his words during the drive over, imagined every reaction, every possible reply. But now, standing in front of her, the words felt heavier. Elizabeth noticed him then, nodded politely, and returned to her client. 2 more, and then. Stretch, she instructed, her tone firm but encouraging. Joon-Woo cleared his throat. She turned, and for a moment, the gym seemed to shrink around them. Elizabeth, he said carefully, may I speak with you? She raised an eyebrow, her beautiful eyes wary. Sure, if this is about technique or membership, I'll help. He shook his head, stepping closer. No. It's something else. Her lips curved into a smirk. Oh, I see. You're about to ask me to, what? Join a cult? Run a marathon in the rain? Joon-Woo's mouth twitched, the hint of a smile threatening to betray his usual composure. I need you to pretend to be my fiancée. Elizabeth blinked, and then she laughed. A full, rich laugh that echoed through the gym. You what? She asked, still chuckling. Excuse me. Did I hear that correctly? Yes, he said, keeping his voice steady. I lied to my parents. I told them I have a fiancé. They're coming to Florida soon, and I need someone to accompany me, someone real. That's why I need you. Elizabeth crossed her arms, her laughter subsiding into an incredulous smile. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé? You think I'll just, what, walk around with you, smile, and nod while your rich parents approve? She shook her head, amusement dancing in her eyes. Sir, no. Absolutely not. Joon-Woo exhaled, trying to mask his frustration. I can pay you, he said carefully. Compensation, a substantial amount. She interrupted, pointing a finger. Ah, so now it's about money? You don't care who I am, what I do, or what I think. You just want a body to show your parents. Wrong. No. I'm not for sale. Joon-Woo paused. He had expected hesitation, maybe even negotiation. But not this outright dismissal. His pride flared, yet beneath it, a strange curiosity stirred. Think about it, he said quietly. I'm offering a fair deal. You help me with this one thing, and I make it worth your while. Nothing personal, I promise. Just this 1 week, these appearances. Elizabeth shook her head again, eyes bright with defiance. I don't do fake relationships. And I definitely don't do favors for rich strangers who walk into my gym and think a wad of cash will convince me. Joon-Woo clenched his jaw, studying her. There was fire in those eyes, a kind of strength he wasn't used to seeing in anyone, let alone someone he needed desperately right now. And for the first time, he felt uneasy being turned down. Fine, he said, straightening. I'll double the amount. Not next week. Not next month. Tomorrow morning, first thing. If that's not enough, then I will find another way. Elizabeth's eyes widened. Double it? Are you insane? I'm serious, he said, voice calm but edged with steel. I need you, Elizabeth. That's all. She looked at him, trying not to let her curiosity show, her mind racing. Why does he need me? What kind of man offers this much, just to pretend? I'll think about it, she said finally, still shaking her head. Joon-Woo nodded once, turning away, his mind already plotting how he would convince her. He knew this wasn't just about money. He didn't fully understand it yet, but something about her, the confidence, the fire, the refusal to agree, drew him in deeper than he wanted to admit. As he left the gym, Elizabeth watched him go, her heart strangely unsettled. She had no idea that her life, so carefully controlled, was about to become inextricably tied to this man, and that their fake relationship might just lead to something neither of them could predict. The next morning, the gym smelled of fresh polish and faint citrus from the cleaning crew. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting long golden streaks across the polished floors. Elizabeth Monroe was already at her station, guiding a client through stretches, her movements fluid, precise, professional. She hadn't expected to see him again so soon. Joon-Woon stepped through the entrance with the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to having his way. Today, he carried no briefcase, no folder, only a small envelope in his hand, the weight of it almost symbolic. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow, pausing mid-stretch. "Back so soon?" she asked, suspicion clear in her tone. "I promised to return," he said simply, his voice calm, unshakable. "And I'm serious about what I offered yesterday." She crossed her arms, challenging him without saying a word. He held out the envelope. "Double the amount. All expenses included. 1 month of appearances, dinners, family introductions. That's it. No strings attached. No personal obligations beyond that." Elizabeth stared at the envelope as if it burned her eyes. She had worked hard for every dollar she earned, yet the sum he offered would pay off her mother's medical bills and clear her debts. 4 months. Her logical mind screamed take it and run, while her pride shouted never bow to money or a man like this. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally, her tone wary. "You're rich enough to buy half of Miami, yet you're standing here begging me to pretend to be your fiancé." "I'm not begging," he said carefully, stepping closer, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "I'm asking. And I'll make it worth your while. But I need you to understand, my parents arrive in a week time. They need to meet someone they believe I've chosen. That's all. 1 month. Then it's over." Elizabeth's jaw tightened. She hated that he looked so composed. That he radiated authority. Even now. That somehow, despite everything, she felt the pull of curiosity, the tinge of something dangerous and irresistible. Finally, with a slow exhale, she reached for the envelope, her fingers brushing his for the briefest second. A spark, unexpected, fleeting, ran through her. "I'm doing this," she said, her voice steady but her heart pounding. "But understand this, I don't fall for rich men who throw money at problems. I do this for me. For my mother. Nothing more." Joon-Woo's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. "Fair enough. That's all I ask. Just be yourself." Elizabeth paused. "Be myself? You know that's a problem, right? I'm not some perfect socialite. I curse when I'm frustrated, I eat like a monster after workouts, and I have opinions." He tilted his head, studying her. "Good. I don't want perfect. I want real. That's what makes you interesting." She felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. For the first time, someone had spoken to her like she wasn't an accessory, like she actually mattered beyond what she could give him. Elizabeth cleared her throat and stuffed the envelope into her bag. "Fine. We have a deal. But one thing, if your parents expect me to act fake, I walk. Understand?" "I understand," he replied, dark amusement flickering in his eyes. "And just so we're clear, I don't intend to push you into anything. We play this my way, and we keep it professional." Elizabeth shook her head with a wry smile. "Your way? That'll be interesting to watch." As she turned back to her client, Joon-Woo lingered near the doorway, watching her work. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or acquisitions. All he could think about was the woman who had just agreed to step into a world she didn't belong to, and how every glance, every word from her, made his perfectly ordered life feel unpredictable in the best way. And in that moment, both of them, so different, so stubborn, so impossible, realized that this fake engagement might not stay fake for long. Later that evening, Joon-Woo drove Elizabeth through the palm-lined streets of Miami, the car quiet except for the hum of the engine. She sat beside him, still slightly on edge but curious, glancing at his sharp profile as he navigated the city. "I want you to see my place," he said finally, his tone measured. "Not for extravagance, but so we can prepare. My parents may ask how we met, how long we've known each other, the little things. I want us to be ready." Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "We're rehearsing a lie." "Not just a lie," he corrected smoothly. "A story. A believable one. Something they would accept and admire." She studied him for a moment, then sighed, shaking her head. "This is insane. But I suppose If I'm doing this, I need to know the rules. Joon-Woo's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. I already wrote them down. He handed her a small leather-bound notebook. Inside, neatly organized in his precise handwriting, were the rules for their engagement, the do's and don'ts, from the casual to the serious. 1. Smile warmly at my parents, be polite and engaging. 2. Share stories of how we met, the story we've agreed on, gym friendship, a chance encounter, mutual admiration for discipline and fitness. 3. Compliment my parents sincerely, but without overdoing it. 4. Attend any family dinners or outings without complaint. 5. Reveal financial or personal hardships. 6. Act flirtatious beyond casual comfort. 7. Argue or challenge me in front of my parents. Elizabeth flipped through the pages, suppressing a grin. You're thorough. I should have expected nothing less from you. I expect nothing less from you either, he said, locking eyes with her. This is temporary, but it needs to be seamless. We need to convince them and ourselves, if nothing else, that this is real. Elizabeth nodded, taking the notebook. All right. I can do this. But, we need a story. Something charming. Something that won't make them suspicious. Joon-Woo's expression softened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability in his otherwise controlled demeanor. We met at the gym. You were teaching, I was running. I admired your discipline. You noticed me, corrected my form, we became friends, then well, it grew naturally. That's it. Simple. True enough to be believable. Elizabeth smirked. Simple. I can do simple. But I swear, if they ask about your love life before me, I'm blaming you. He chuckled quietly, the sound low and rare, like a secret kept just between them. Deal. By the time they arrived at the mansion, the sun had set, and Miami's skyline glimmered in the distance. Elizabeth followed him inside, taking in the vast elegance of his home, artfully minimalist, every detail precise, yet warm in its own way. I'll give you a tour, Joon-Woo said. Not for show. I want you to feel comfortable here. After all, we'll be spending more time together than you might like. Elizabeth laughed softly. Comfortable is subjective. But I'll try. Just don't make this too easy for me, okay? He regarded her with a careful, quiet intensity. I won't. And that's part of the plan. As they walked through the marble halls and soft-lit living spaces, both of them felt it, the unspoken tension, the thrill of proximity, the dangerous spark that neither could fully control. They were two worlds colliding, wealth and independence, power and pride. And the game they were playing, meant to be temporary, was already starting to feel complicated in ways neither of them expected. Elizabeth set the notebook on the table in the study, opening it again as if preparing for a test. We need to rehearse. And I need to know, Mr. CEO, are there consequences if I fail? Joon-Woo's eyes darkened, a playful glint beneath the seriousness. Depends on how you define failure. Elizabeth's lips quirked into a small, wary smile. Great. Then we're off to a solid start. And in that moment, the mansion felt less like a fortress and more like a stage, a place where rules were written, stories rehearsed, and something unexpected was already beginning. Between them. The afternoon sun glinted off the sleek black luxury car as it pulled into the Miami airport. Joon-Woo Han's parents had arrived, fresh from Seoul, their expressions a mix of curiosity and authority, the kind only parents with high expectations carried. Elizabeth adjusted her hair in the rearview mirror, sitting beside Joon-Woo with a calm, polite smile. Despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach, she reminded herself, professional. Polite. Charming. She was prepared for anything, except the warmth she was about to receive. Joon-Woo opened the back door first for his parents. Iyama, Appa, he said respectfully. His mother stepped forward, her face breaking into a delighted smile. Joon-Woo. It's so good to see you. She turned her gaze on Elizabeth. And you must be the young lady I've heard so much about. Elizabeth curtsied slightly, offering her hand politely. It's a pleasure to meet you both. His father shook her hand firmly, scrutinizing her for a moment before nodding in approval. You have poise, confidence. That's good. Joon-Woo has always had a taste for women with strength. Elizabeth felt herself blush, a small thrill running through her. Their approval came quicker than she had expected. The drive to the mansion was filled with light conversation, Elizabeth answering questions gracefully about her life, her family, and her work as a gym instructor. Joon-Woo occasionally shot her glances, silent communication passing between them, reminders of the story they had rehearsed. Once home, the chef had prepared a sumptuous dinner, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a light citrus salad. The dining room was elegant but warm, the table set perfectly, the soft light reflecting off the polished silverware. Elizabeth, his mother began, curiosity sparkling in her eyes, tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? Elizabeth smiled, taking a deep breath. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. My parents moved me to Florida when I was 12. I've always loved fitness, helping people improve their lives and health. She hesitated slightly, careful to stay within the story they had agreed upon. I met Joon-Woo, well, it was a chance meeting at the gym. I corrected his form, and we just connected over our shared appreciation for discipline. His father raised an eyebrow. Discipline? That's an interesting way to meet someone. Elizabeth chuckled softly. It may sound unusual, but it's true. He's always very dedicated. I admire that in people. She glanced at Joon-Woo discreetly. He nodded slightly, his expression unreadable but supportive. Do you have family nearby? His mother asked, her tone genuinely warm. Yes, Elizabeth replied. My mother lives in Florida. She's been my rock through everything. And my father, he passed away when I was young, so my mother raised me mostly on her own. She kept her voice steady, letting a hint of emotion color it without overplaying. His mother reached across the table, touching Elizabeth's hand lightly. I can see where Joon-Woo gets his resilience. You come from strength as well. Dinner continued with gentle laughter and easy conversation. Joon-Woo's parents were curious, engaged, and most importantly, pleased. They liked her immediately. Elizabeth's charm and honesty had already won them over. Throughout the evening, Joon-Woo observed quietly. There were subtle touches, fleeting smiles, shared glances that he hadn't expected to make him feel this way. Elizabeth was handling the charade flawlessly, but he noticed the small ways she moved, how natural she was, how her laughter seemed to fill the room. By the end of dinner, the tension he had feared was gone. His parents were delighted. Elizabeth had passed every test he could have imagined, and yet a new, unexpected feeling had begun to stir between them all, a mix of warmth, admiration, and undeniable chemistry. As the family retired to the living room for tea, Joon-Woo leaned slightly toward Elizabeth. You were perfect, he whispered quietly. Elizabeth smirked softly, a hint of mischief in her eyes. I aim to please. And for the first time, Joon-Woo wondered if their arrangement, designed to be temporary, professional, and distant might just be far more complicated than either of them had anticipated. At the room for tea, soft music played in the background, the scent of freshly brewed Earl Grey mingling with the faint aroma of the chef's dessert. Elizabeth sat on the edge of a plush armchair, careful to maintain her posture, yet relaxing slightly as conversation flowed easily. Joon-Woo's parents asked about her hobbies, her favorite books, and even teased her gently about keeping Joon-Woo in line, a question that made her chuckle softly. She had gotten used to the rhythm of the evening, answering politely, staying charming, and letting her personality shine just enough to be memorable. As the teacups emptied and dessert plates cleared, Elizabeth realized it was getting late. She rose, smoothing her hair over her shoulder. I should go, she said softly, glancing at Joon-Woo. I have some clients to check on in the morning, and before she could continue, his mother leaned forward, her eyes warm but insistent. Elizabeth. You live here, don't you? You've moved in with Joon-Woo. Elizabeth froze, caught off guard. Her heart skipped a beat. Oh, no, I don't. Joon-Woo interjected, his voice calm but with an urgency she hadn't expected. Actually, he reached across the small table toward her hand, and his dark eyes met hers. Yes, mother. Elizabeth lives here, she moved in a few weeks ago, so we can prepare for our wedding. I feel better since she moved in. Elizabeth blinked in surprise. She had expected politeness, but not this outrageous lie. It shocked her. "What are you saying?" she whispered to him. He shook his head slightly and whispered in her ear. "I know it's unusual. But it's important. 4. Appearances. And I'll double your pay for the nights you will stay." Her jaw nearly dropped. Double pay? For spending few nights? She wanted to protest, to say no, but the earnestness in his eyes, the unexpected vulnerability, left her speechless. Joon-Woo added, softly, almost casually, "I promise. It's for them and for us. It will make everything easier." Elizabeth studied him for a long moment. Part of her resisted. She didn't want to be manipulated by wealth, nor did she want to compromise her independence. But another part of her, curious, cautious, and undeniably intrigued by this man, couldn't ignore the subtle pull she felt. Finally, with a slow exhale, she nodded. "Fine, I'll stay. But only because it's temporary. Not a word about this arrangement to anyone else." Joon-Woo's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. "That's all I ask." His mother beamed at them both, completely unaware of the internal negotiations and subtle tension between the two. "Elizabeth darling, thank you for making my son happy." Elizabeth smiled at her, then settled back into the armchair. Joon-Woo poured them both a fresh cup of tea. For a fleeting moment, as the city lights glittered outside the window, everything felt deceptively calm. But both of them knew, beneath the polite smiles and the careful conversation, their lives had begun to intertwine in ways neither had anticipated, and staying just one night would likely be far more complicated than either of them expected. After the tea, the evening had grown quiet. Joon-Woo's parents had retired early to their guest rooms upstairs, leaving Elizabeth and Joon-Woo alone in the living room. The house, massive and impeccably decorated, suddenly felt smaller in the soft glow of the lamps. Elizabeth shifted nervously on the plush armchair. She had agreed to stay, but the thought of sharing a space, even temporarily, with Joon-Woo made her pulse quicken. She reminded herself, it's only one night. Professional. Temporary. Joon-Woo, ever composed, poured himself a glass of water and regarded her with calm eyes. "I assume you're fine with the room arrangement," he said carefully, not moving yet. Elizabeth blinked, caught off guard. "Room arrangement?" she asked. He gestured toward the guest bedroom nearby. "My mother assumed we would stay in the same room. It's more comfortable for them, and easier for the story. If you want, there's another room, but," he paused, letting the words hang. "I thought it might be easier this way." Her heart skipped a beat. The situation was absurd. And yet there was something about the way he said it, casual, unassuming, almost like it was nothing, that made it harder to say no. "I suppose it's fine," she said, her voice steady but a touch sharp. "One night. That's it." "Exactly," he replied, his lips curving into a faint, rare smile. "One night. And I promise, nothing inappropriate. You're a guest here, and I respect that." They walked together to the guest bedroom. The room was large, decorated with soft tones, warm lighting, and a king-sized bed dressed in crisp white linens. Elizabeth's gaze swept over it, trying not to imagine what it might feel like to actually be in the same bed as him. Joon-Woo noticed her hesitation and said lightly, "There are 2 blankets. We don't need to share if you prefer." Elizabeth blinked at him. Thank you. That's considerate." He left her to settle in, but when he returned, he sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of a clock and the faint hum of the city outside. They talked, first about mundane things, the chef's dinner, the city lights, the upcoming week, rehearsing tiny details about their relationship in front of his parents. But slowly, the conversation drifted. Elizabeth found herself laughing quietly at his rare moments of humor, noticing the subtle ways his dark eyes softened when he spoke candidly. And Joon-Woo, in turn, found himself drawn to the way she moved, how natural she was, how her charm didn't need any effort to make his meticulously controlled world feel alive. Eventually, exhaustion overtook them. Elizabeth stretched and yawned, preparing for bed. Joon-Woo pulled the second blanket onto the bed, leaving a clear space between them. "Good night," he said softly. "Good night," she replied, trying to focus on the ordinary words and ignore the tingling awareness of him in the same room. But sleep didn't come immediately. Both of them found their thoughts wandering, toward the closeness that had been forced by circumstance. For one night, they shared a room, a bed between them, rules in place, but an unspoken tension filling the space. It was innocent, professional, and carefully contained, yet charged in a way neither could deny. And as the city lights twinkled outside, one thing was certain, the charade was beginning to feel far more real than either of them had planned. The first light of dawn filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting soft gold across the guest room. Elizabeth stirred, blinking against the brightness, acutely aware of the gentle rhythm of the city outside and the faint presence of Joon-Woo on the other side of the bed. He was still asleep, his dark hair slightly tousled, his normally sharp features softened by rest. Elizabeth's chest tightened, a mix of awkwardness and something entirely new, a subtle, undeniable awareness of him. She moved carefully, reaching for her phone to check the time. Early morning sunlight gleamed across the polished floors of the mansion, reminding her that she wasn't home, that she wasn't in control of this situation, at least, not entirely. Joon-Woo stirred, his eyes opening slowly. "Morning," he said in a low, husky tone, still half asleep. "Morning," Elizabeth replied, her voice steady but tinged with amusement. She quickly reminded herself, professional. Temporary. One night. He swung his legs off the bed, stretching casually. "Sleep well?" "As well as I could," she said with a small smirk, carefully avoiding any mention of how close she had felt to him in the same room. Their conversation was light, filled with the necessary pleasantries, but it carried attention neither could ignore. Every glance, every casual brush of the hand across a blanket, seemed to spark something unsaid. Before they could leave the room, Joon-Woo's mother's voice floated up from the hall. "Elizabeth. Joon-Woo. We're going shopping. Come on, quickly, before the stores get too busy." Elizabeth froze. Shopping? With his parents? Her stomach fluttered. She had rehearsed dinners, polite conversation, and careful introductions, but this was a whole new battlefield. Joon-Woo glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Well, it seems you're staying out in public sooner than planned," he said softly. Elizabeth groaned quietly, half amused, half exasperated. "I can't believe this. I haven't even had breakfast yet." "It'll be fine," he said, slipping his hand lightly over hers as they moved down the hallway. "We'll stick to the story. Jim. Chance meeting. Mutual admiration. Simple. Believable. And I promise to keep you sane during the ordeal." Elizabeth allowed herself a small laugh. "You call holding my hand sane?" He let go almost immediately, feigning innocence. "No. That was strictly for safety. Public safety." The car ride to the shopping district was filled with gentle banter. His parents chatted about fashion, asked Elizabeth for her opinions on local designers, and complimented her on her style and poise. Elizabeth answered with grace, occasionally teasing Joon-Woo, who shot her subtle, amused glances. Despite herself, Elizabeth felt the warmth of acceptance, and even a spark of enjoyment at the playful tension between them. It was odd, confusing, and thrilling all at once, this bizarre arrangement had already started to blur the lines between pretend and reality. As the car pulled up outside a high-end boutique, Joon-Woo's mother clapped her hands excitedly. "Come on. I want to see your taste, Elizabeth. Show me how to shop properly." Elizabeth took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and followed them into the bustling streets. Every step was a balancing act between keeping up appearances and navigating her growing awareness of Joon-Woo. And through it all, Joon-Woo stayed close, his presence a steadying force and a constant unspoken reminder that this arrangement, while temporary on paper, was starting to feel very real in every unexpected way. The boutique was filled with soft music and the gentle rustle of expensive fabrics. Elizabeth moved carefully through the racks, her hands brushing over tailored jackets and silk dresses, all while keeping her composure under the watchful eyes of Joon-Woo's parents. "You have such an eye, Elizabeth," his mother said warmly, picking up a scarf. "You know exactly what suits someone." Elizabeth smiled politely, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you. I've always appreciated style that's classic but comfortable." Joon-Woo trailed behind her, his hands casually in his pockets, his dark eyes fixed on her with a quiet intensity that made her skin tingle. He didn't speak, didn't need to. She felt him there. Close enough to notice the faint scent of his cologne and the subtle shift in the air between them. His father picked up a sleek leather wallet and nodded. She seems grounded. Joon-Woo has good taste in a wife. Elizabeth's lips curved into a small smile. I think it runs in the family. The group moved to the dressing rooms, with Joon-Woo discreetly offering his opinion. Whenever Elizabeth asked, "Try that," he suggested softly, nodding toward a simple but elegant dress. "It'll look good on you." Elizabeth paused, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. She knew he was giving her more than just a fashion tip. There was an underlying awareness in his voice, a closeness that wasn't entirely professional. She tried to shake it off. Keep it simple. Just appearances. As she stepped out of the dressing room in the chosen dress, his mother clapped her hands. Elizabeth. That's perfect. Joon-Woo's eyes darkened slightly, a quiet approval that made her pulse quicken. He stepped closer, standing just behind her as if to subtly shield her from the public view. The proximity made her heart race, but she maintained her calm, professional smile. Does it fit comfortably? He asked, his voice low, almost intimate. It does, she replied, trying not to let the tremor in her voice betray her awareness of him so close. They continued through the boutique, his mother chatting animatedly about handbags and shoes, his father examining watches. But in every quiet moment, in every passing glance, Elizabeth felt the magnetic pull of Joon-Woo's presence. At one point, they stopped to look at a display of sunglasses. Elizabeth picked up a sleek pair and turned to him with a teasing grin. Do these suit me, Mr. CEO? He smirked lightly. They suit you because you're wearing them. But I think I prefer your eyes without them. Elizabeth froze for a heartbeat, heat rushing to her cheeks. She tried to respond with a witty retort, but her mind went blank, and she quickly put the sunglasses back. His parents, oblivious, continued chatting happily about brands and colors. But in that small, fleeting moment, the tension between Elizabeth and Joon-Woo was undeniable, a quiet electric current running beneath the surface of polite conversation. By the end of the shopping trip, Elizabeth realized that being near him was far more complicated than she had anticipated. She was supposed to be a fake fiancé, just a part of a story, but every glance, every subtle touch, and every teasing word made it increasingly difficult to keep the distance she had promised herself. As they walked back to the car, Joon-Woo offered her his arm, and she accepted, her hand brushing lightly against his. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the undeniable growing tension between them. And in that moment, Elizabeth understood something she hadn't admitted to herself yet. Pretending was becoming dangerously real. The ride back to the mansion was calmer, the kind of calm that settled after too much excitement. Joon-Woo's parents chatted contentedly in the back seat, satisfied with their shopping spree and clearly pleased with Elizabeth. His mother kept glancing at her with an approving smile, as if already imagining a future that included her permanently. Elizabeth sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, her mind replaying small moments from the day, Joon-Woo's quiet compliments, the way he stood close without touching, the subtle protection in his presence. She told herself not to overthink it. This is part of the job, she reminded herself. Nothing more. Back at the mansion, his parents decided to rest before dinner, retreating upstairs with the ease of people who felt completely at home. That was when the silence changed. The house felt different without an audience. Elizabeth slipped off her shoes near the entryway and exhaled softly. Your parents are intense, she said lightly, trying to break the tension. Joon-Woo chuckled, loosening his tie. That's one way to put it. But they like you a lot. She glanced at him. I noticed. They moved into the kitchen, where the late afternoon light poured in through tall windows. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet stretched, comfortable but charged. You handled today well, Joon-Woo said finally. Shopping with my mother isn't easy. She's particular. Elizabeth smiled. She's kind. Curious. She asks questions that make you think twice before answering. That's how she knows when someone is lying, he replied. Elizabeth's smile faded just a little. Then we should be careful. He studied her face, his expression unreadable. You weren't lying today. She met his gaze. No. I wasn't. That truth settled between them, heavier than either expected. Joon-Woo leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. I know this situation is unfair to you. I keep asking for more, first the dinner, then staying the night, now living arrangements. Appearances, his voice softened. If you want to walk away, say it. I won't stop you. Elizabeth was surprised by the sincerity in his tone. She shook her head slowly. I agreed to this. And I don't like quitting halfway. She paused, then added quietly, but you should know, this isn't as easy for me as I pretend. His eyes darkened, something unguarded flickering across his face. It's not easy for me either. The admission hung in the air. They stood there, closer than they should have been, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Between them. Elizabeth suddenly became aware of how tall he was, how calm his presence felt despite the tension. This is where we draw the line, she said softly, more to herself than to him. We're pretending. Nothing else. Joon-Woo nodded. I know. But neither of them stepped away. For a brief, dangerous moment, it felt as though one breath, one wrong move could shatter every rule they had written. Then footsteps echoed faintly from upstairs. Elizabeth took a step back, her composure snapping back into place. I should check my phone, she said quickly. Yes, he agreed, equally controlled again. Dinner will be ready soon. As she walked away, Elizabeth felt her heart racing, not with fear, but with something far more unsettling. Behind her, Joon-Woo remained where he was, staring at the space she had just occupied. Realizing a truth he wasn't ready to face yet. This arrangement was no longer just a strategy. And Elizabeth Monroe was no longer just a role he had hired. The gym felt familiar to Elizabeth in a way nothing else in Joon-Woo's world did. The sharp scent of disinfectant, the steady rhythm of machines, the quiet focus of people pushing their limits, it grounded her. This was her space. The one place where she didn't have to pretend to be anyone else. Joon-Woo walked in beside her, dressed in sleek athletic wear, his posture composed but his eyes alert. Bringing his parents had been impossible that morning, but his mother had insisted that Elizabeth and Joon-Woo go together, couples who exercise together stay healthy. Together, she'd said with a smile that allowed no argument. Elizabeth clipped her hair back and stretched, instantly slipping into professional mode. You warm up first, she told Joon-Woo. Don't jump straight into cardio. He nodded, watching her move with a focus that had nothing to do with exercise. As she walked across the floor to greet a client, a tall man stepped into her path, grinning easily. He was athletic, confident, clearly familiar with her. Liz, he said warmly. Didn't know you were in this early. She smiled back, relaxed. Abel, I had to fit a session in. They exchanged a few words, easy, friendly, comfortable. Abel laughed at something she said. Leaning slightly closer, his attention clearly fixed on her. Across the gym, Joon-Woo slowed on the treadmill. His jaw tightened. He told himself it was ridiculous. Elizabeth was a gym instructor. Of course men talked to her. Of course they smiled. This was none of his business. And yet, something sharp twisted in his chest as he watched the way she laughed, how natural it was, how unguarded. Abel gestured toward the weights. You should let me steal you for a session later. Coffee. After. Elizabeth hesitated, still smiling but more reserved now. I'll see, she said diplomatically. Joon-Woo stepped off the treadmill before he realized he'd decided to. He walked over, placing himself just close enough to Elizabeth that his presence was unmistakable. Elizabeth, he said calmly, his voice low. Are you ready? She turned, surprised. Oh, yeah. Give me a minute. Joon-Woo nodded once, then looked at Abel, offering a polite but unmistakably cold smile. I'm her fiancé. The word landed heavier than it should have. Abel blinked, then chuckled. Ah. Lucky man. Elizabeth shot Joon-Woo a sharp look, but he ignored it, his hand settling lightly at the small of her back, a gesture meant for appearances, but one that sent a jolt through them both. Abel backed away with a casual wave. See you around, Liz. As soon as he was gone, Elizabeth turned to Joon-Woo, lowering her voice. What was that? His hand dropped immediately. Maintaining the story, he said evenly. He was persistent. He was being friendly, she replied, annoyed. I can handle myself. I know, Joon-Woo said, his gaze steady. But you didn't say no. Her eyes narrowed. I don't owe anyone an explanation, especially not you. The words stung more than he expected. They walked toward the free weights in tense silence. Joon-Woo tried to focus on his form, but his mind kept replaying the way Abel had looked at her, like she was someone he wanted. Elizabeth corrected his posture sharply. You're overcompensating, she said. Relax your shoulders. He did as she said, then muttered, I don't like the way he looked at you. She froze. Slowly, she met his eyes. You don't get to like or dislike anything. This is a contract. Remember? I know, he replied. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She challenged. He didn't answer right away. Because the truth was dangerously simple and dangerously honest. He was jealous. And that was never part of the deal. As Elizabeth turned away, her heart pounding harder than she wanted to admit, one thought echoed in her mind. If this is fake, why does it suddenly feel like someone could lose something real? The drive back to the mansion was quiet, too quiet. Elizabeth stared out the window, her reflection faint against the glass, replaying the scene at the gym over and over again. The jealousy in Joon-Woo's voice had unsettled her. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it had been real. Back at the house, his parents were out for the afternoon, leaving the mansion unusually empty. The silence pressed in on them as soon as the doors closed. Elizabeth dropped her gym bag near the couch and turned to him. We need to talk. Joon-Woo loosened his jacket, already bracing himself. About earlier? Yes, she said firmly. You crossed a line. He frowned. I was protecting the image. No, she countered. You were marking territory. Those are two very different things. His jaw tightened. You didn't shut him down. Because I didn't need to, she snapped. I'm not your possession, Joon-Woo. Fake fiancé or not. I never said you were, he replied, his voice low but strained. But you acted like it, she said. And that scares me. Because this was supposed to be simple. He stepped closer. You think this is simple for me? Yes, she said without hesitation. For you, everything is a transaction. You pay, people comply. But I don't work like that. The words hit harder than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Joon-Woo's eyes darkened. You think I don't know that? That's exactly why I chose you. Then remember it, she shot back. Don't try to control me. The room felt suddenly too small. Elizabeth grabbed her bag, her movements sharp. I'm leaving. He blinked. Elizabeth, wait. My parents. I don't care, she said, voice trembling despite her resolve. You promised respect. And today, I didn't feel it. She walked toward the door. Stay, he said quietly. Not as a command. As a plea. She paused for half a second, then shook her head. I can't. The door closed behind her with a soft but final click. The house felt wrong immediately. Too quiet. Too empty. Joon-Woo stood in the middle of the living room long after she was gone, staring at the space where she had stood just moments earlier. The rules he had written, every carefully constructed boundary, felt useless now. That night, he couldn't sleep. He noticed everything she had touched, the throw pillow she always adjusted, the mug she preferred, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel like a sanctuary, it felt like a shell. He reached for his phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. Don't. You crossed a line. But the truth settled heavy in his chest. He missed her. Not the role she played. Not the image she helped him sell. He missed Elizabeth, her honesty, her fire, the way she challenged him without fear. And as the hours dragged on, one thing became painfully clear. The worst mistake he had made wasn't getting jealous. It was letting her walk out the door. Morning came, but it brought no peace. Joon-Woo stood in his kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The mansion, once a symbol of success and control, now felt hollow, like a place built for someone who had forgotten how to live in it. Elizabeth's absence echoed everywhere. In the quiet hallways. In the empty seat across the table. In the silence that followed him from room to room. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her walking away, her back straight, her pride intact. He replayed their argument again and again, wondering at which moment he could have stopped it. What words he could have chosen differently. At breakfast, his mother studied him over her teacup. "You're distracted," she said gently. "You barely touched your food." "I'm fine," Joon-Woo replied automatically. His father folded his newspaper. "You don't look fine. Where is Elizabeth? She usually joins us." Joon-Woo hesitated. "She had work." His mother frowned slightly. "So early? She didn't say goodbye." The concern in her voice twisted something deep in his chest. "She left last night," he admitted quietly. "Left?" his mother repeated. "Why?" He couldn't bring himself to lie again. "Not about this. We argued," he said simply. His mother exchanged a look with his father, then sighed. "Relationships are not contracts. Joon-Woo. You can't manage feelings the way you manage companies." The word struck harder than any reprimand. At the office later that day, nothing went right. Meetings blurred together. His assistants repeated questions he barely heard. A multi-million-dollar deal stalled because he forgot to sign a document he had reviewed 3 times. This had never happened before. At lunch, he found himself staring at his phone again, hovering over Elizabeth's name. He wanted to apologize. No, he wanted to explain. To tell her that the jealousy had scared him too. That he hadn't known he could feel something so raw. But pride held his hand still. Across the city, Elizabeth sat in her small apartment, gym bag slung over a chair, shoes kicked off near the door. She told herself she had done the right thing. She had set a boundary. She had protected herself. She refused to be controlled, by money, by expectations, by a man who wasn't supposed to matter. So why did her chest ache? She went through her routine mechanically, shower, stretch, prepare for work. But every quiet moment betrayed her. She missed his calm presence. His rare smiles. The way he listened. When she spoke, really listened. She hated that she missed him. At the gym, Abel noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked after a session. "You seem elsewhere." "I'm fine," she said, forcing a smile. But she wasn't. That night, Elizabeth lay awake staring at the ceiling, phone on her nightstand. She told herself not to reach out. She told herself this was temporary, that their worlds were too different. Yet deep down, she knew the truth. The contract might have been fake, but the connection wasn't. Late that evening, Joon-Woo stood alone on his balcony, Miami's skyline glowing below him. He finally picked up his phone. He typed. Deleted. Typed again. "Joon-Woo, I was wrong." He stared at the words, then added. "I miss you." He didn't send it. But for the first time, he admitted something he could no longer deny. Elizabeth Monroe wasn't just someone he had hired. She was the woman who had changed everything and the one he would have to fight for, if he wanted her back. The living room was unusually still as Joon-Woo stood before his parents. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, illuminating the seriousness etched into his face. He had barely slept. But clarity, painful and undeniable, had finally settled in his chest. "There's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. His mother set her teacup down at once. His father folded his hands, sensing the weight of his tone. "The engagement," Joon-Woo continued. "It wasn't real. At least not in the beginning." Silence fell like a curtain. His mother's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I hired Elizabeth," he said, the words heavy but honest. "I lied because I felt cornered. I thought it would be temporary. A solution." His father exhaled slowly, leaning back. "So the woman we welcomed into this family, it was an arrangement?" "Yes," Joon-Woo admitted. "But I never intended for it to become complicated. And I never intended to hurt her." His mother stood abruptly, pacing a few steps before turning back to him. "You lied to us. And to her." "I know," he said. "And I regret it." For a long moment, neither of his parents spoke. Joon-Woo braced himself for anger. Disappointment, condemnation. Instead, his father spoke calmly. "How do you feel about her now?" The question caught him off guard. His voice faltered. He swallowed. I miss her. I think about her constantly. I've never felt this way before. I didn't know jealousy could feel so frightening or that losing someone could hurt this much. His mother's expression softened. Then that's not fake, Joon-Woo. He looked up. You made a foolish choice, she continued, but feelings cannot be manufactured. If they exist, they deserve honesty. His father nodded. You have spent your life doing what is expected of you. For once, follow your heart, not your fear. Emotion tightened Joon-Woo's chest. I don't know if she'll forgive me. That is not for you to decide, his mother said gently. But you owe her the truth. And an apology. Joon-Woo didn't hesitate this time. He reached for his phone. Elizabeth answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Hello. It's me, he said softly. Elizabeth. I told my parents everything. About the fake engagement. About the money. About the lie. There was a pause on the line. And, she asked quietly. And they told me to stop hiding and start being honest, he said. I'm done pretending. I need to see you. Her breath caught. Joon-Woo. Please, he said, voice steady but raw. Send me your address. I'm coming to you. Not as your employer. Not as your fiancé. Just as a man who doesn't want to lose you. Silence stretched between them. Then she spoke, softer now. Give me a minute. A message came through seconds later. An address. Joon-Woo picked up his keys, heart pounding, not with fear this time, but with resolve. For the first time, he wasn't running from expectations or hiding behind contracts. He was driving straight toward the woman who had taught him what it meant to feel. And whatever waited for him at her door, rejection or forgiveness, he knew one thing for certain. This time, he was choosing truth. Joon-Woo's hands tightened around the steering wheel as he pulled up in front of Elizabeth's apartment building. It wasn't grand. It wasn't guarded by gates or marble columns. It was real. Just like her. And for the first time, he understood how little all his wealth mattered compared to what he was about to lose. He took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened slowly. Elizabeth stood there, dressed simply, her long straight hair falling over her shoulders, her beautiful eyes guarded but searching. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I'm not here to negotiate, Joon-Woo said quietly. Or to explain things away. She stepped aside, allowing him in. They stood in her small living room, the air thick with unsaid words. Finally, he turned to face her. Fully, his voice breaking through the silence. I was wrong, he began. Not just about the jealousy. About everything. I treated something human like it was a contract. And I hurt you because of it. Elizabeth folded her arms, but her eyes shimmered. You made me feel like I was replaceable. Like I was just another solution to your problem. You were never that to me, he said firmly. You were the first person who made me feel seen. And that terrified me. I didn't know how to handle it. Her breath hitched. I told my parents the truth, he continued. All of it. The fake engagement. The money. The lie. And they didn't reject you. They told me to follow my heart. Her defenses cracked. And what does your heart say? He stepped closer, careful not to touch her unless she allowed it. It says I love you. Not the role you played. Not the image. You. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. I tried to leave, Elizabeth whispered. I told myself it was easy. But it wasn't. I missed you too. Every day. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, two people stripped of pride, fear, and pretense. Then Elizabeth closed the distance and wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was real. I love you too, she said softly. But this time, no contracts. No money. Just us. Only us, he promised. A gentle cough interrupted them. Elizabeth pulled back quickly. Oh, my mom. Her mother stood in the hallway, watching them with kind, knowing eyes. Elizabeth introduced Joon-Woo, her voice steady but warm. I've heard a lot about you, her mother said, extending her hand. Some good. Some confusing. Joon-Woo smiled sheepishly. I deserve that. They sat together for tea, this time without lies or rehearsed stories. Joon-Woo spoke honestly, about his parents, the pressure, his mistakes, and how Elizabeth had changed him. Her mother listened quietly, then nodded. "You came here to fight for her," she said. "That tells me everything I need to know." When they left, Elizabeth slipped her hand into his. It felt natural. Earned. Back at the mansion, Joon-Woo's parents were waiting. The moment Elizabeth stepped inside, his mother crossed the room and embraced her warmly. "Welcome home," she said softly. Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. His father nodded with approval. "This time, we meet you not as a fiancé by arrangement but as the woman our son chose." Joon-Woo laced his fingers with Elizabeth's. For the first time, there was no pretending, no fear of being found out. Dating Joon-Woo Han openly felt nothing like pretending. There were no scripts, no rules written in neat handwriting, no money changing hands. Just stolen breakfasts in her apartment before work, late-night walks along the Florida shoreline, and quiet moments where he listened while Elizabeth talked about her dreams, her clients, and her plans for the future. For the first time, Joon-Woo learned how to be present. He showed up at the gym, not as a billionaire CEO, but as her partner, sometimes embarrassing her by bringing smoothies and waiting patiently while she finished sessions. Elizabeth teased him relentlessly for his seriousness, teaching him how to laugh without restraint, how to let go of control. Most times they went for dinner dates, walks in the park or to the beach to spend quiet moments alone. His parents watched the change in their son with wonder. 5 months passed not in grand gestures, but in consistency. Trust rebuilt itself slowly, brick by brick. Elizabeth no longer wondered if she was just a solution to a problem. Joon-Woo no longer feared losing control by loving deeply. One evening, both families gathered at the mansion for dinner. Elizabeth thought nothing of it. By now, dinners together were normal. Comfortable. Safe. After dessert, Joon-Woo stood and cleared his throat. His mother's eyes sparkled knowingly. Elizabeth frowned slightly. "What's going on?" Joon-Woo walked toward her, his expression calm but his eyes shining with emotion. He took her hands, grounding himself in the warmth of her touch. 5 months ago, he began, "I stood at your door terrified, because I knew if I lost you, I would lose the best thing that ever happened to me." Elizabeth's breath caught. "I started this journey with a lie," he continued, voice steady. "But loving you taught me honesty. You taught me respect. You taught me how to choose with my heart instead of fear." He dropped to one knee. Elizabeth gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "I don't want a fake fiancé," Joon-Woo said softly. "I want a real partner. A wife. Someone who challenges me, grounds me, and loves me as fiercely as I love her." He looked up at her, eyes shining. "Elizabeth Monroe, will you marry me?" Tears streamed freely down her cheeks as her mother covered her mouth, overwhelmed with emotion. Joon-Woo's parents watched with pride, his mother already crying, his father smiling broadly. Elizabeth nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, I will." Cheers and laughter filled the room as Joon-Woo slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss filled not with urgency but certainty. Her mother hugged them both tightly. "You chose each other," she whispered. "That's what matters." Joon-Woo's mother clasped Elizabeth's hands. "Welcome to our family. Truly." As Elizabeth leaned into Joon-Woo's side, surrounded by love, she realized something profound. What began as a lie had transformed into the most honest love she had ever known. And this time, there was nothing fake about it at all. Spring arrived gently in Seoul, painting the city in soft blossoms and pale skies. The wedding was held at a private estate overlooking the Han River, where tradition and elegance met in perfect harmony. Elizabeth stood in the bridal suite, her heart racing, not with fear, but with joy. She wore a custom-designed hanbok-inspired wedding gown, ivory silk flowing effortlessly, delicate embroidery woven with symbols of unity and prosperity. Her long straight hair was styled simply, her beautiful eyes glowing with emotion. Beside her stood her mother, fastening the final clasp of her necklace. "You're ready," her mother said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for the wedding. For the life you're choosing." Elizabeth smiled, tears brimming. "I never imagined this." Her mother squeezed her hands. Love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. As the ceremony began, Joon-Woo waited beneath an arch of blossoms, dressed in a tailored traditional suit that honored his heritage. His parents sat in the front row, his mother clutching a handkerchief, eyes already misty with pride. When Elizabeth appeared, the world seemed to still. Joon-Woo's breath caught. This wasn't the woman he had once hired. This was the woman he had chosen again and again. She walked toward him, her mother escorting her with grace, every step a quiet declaration of strength, love, and belonging. The vows were spoken in calm, steady voices, words of truth, forgiveness, and devotion. When Joon-Woo placed the ring on Elizabeth's finger, his hands trembled. With honesty, he said. With love, she replied. Applause rose, warm and heartfelt. At the reception, lanterns glowed softly as laughter filled the night. Cultures blended beautifully. Korean traditions intertwined with soulful music Elizabeth's mother had chosen, a celebration of two worlds becoming one. Joon-Woo's mother embraced Elizabeth tightly. You didn't just marry my son, she whispered. You brought him home to himself. Elizabeth held her just as tightly. Thank you, for loving me. Across the room, Elizabeth's mother watched them with quiet pride, knowing her daughter was exactly where she was meant to be. Later, under a sky full of stars, Joon-Woo and Elizabeth stood hand in hand, the city lights of Seoul shimmering below. We started with a lie, Elizabeth said softly. And ended with the truth, Joon-Woo replied, kissing her forehead. A love that began as a deal had become a choice. Thank you for watching, your support means a lot to us.